Happy New Year, everyone. This is Volleyball Explained and First Tempo podcast. And for the beginning of the year, I have very special guests, Joe and Gage Worsley, Worsley brothers, Worsley bros. One of them playing in Luneburg, the other playing in Chaumont. So we are a very interesting company here, taking into account the group of Levski Luneburg, Jarzebski, and Chaumont in the Champions League. Hi, guys. How are you? First of all.
Doing
good,
well.
doing good.
Doing well.
Yeah, I was thinking just that we need just one Polish guy to actually to complete what is happening in the Champions League. Of course, I'm not playing like you. I'm just a fan and of volleyball. Yeah, let's say podcaster in this way. But you have also a podcast, and Simeon Nikolov was one of your latest guests. I have prepared questions about that also, but let's have this a little bit later. But first of all, of course, let's start from the beginning and the start of your volleyball careers, because probably that's very special when it comes to brothers. You were born, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were born in 2 consecutive years, 97, 98, right?
Yeah, 16 months apart.
Yeah, so your parents were in a hurry. It seems like
Yeah.
to get the job done. But how did your volleyball career start?
Joe, you started, so you were before me.
Yeah. We both, I was 7, I think Gage was 6 when we started playing organized volleyball. Our father, he had been a volleyball coach since he got out of college. So for us, we grew up just around the sport. We grew up around a lot of sports, very competitive family. And, growing up when we were younger, we played just about everything in the United States that's popular. And our parents put us into everything. And actually, a family friend was the one who introduced us to the first organized volleyball team. And we started playing from the first day. We loved it. We'd always grown up around the sport, but we hadn't played on a team up until that point. And we played on a team that was actually 12 and unders. So we were, 5 and 6 years younger than all the other kids. And we would play against, because in that area, there's not a lot of boys youth teams. So we would play in girls volleyball tournaments. For the first few years, it would be like us versus all the younger girls teams. And that's how we kind of got into the sport. But we loved it immediately. And we played every style: grass, beach, indoor. We would set up in our bedroom, like we call bedroom volleyball. We play every single morning that we could in our bedroom. We just like nonstop, always playing volleyball. And if we had the resources that kids do have nowadays, we'd be watching volleyball all the time too, with all the videos on YouTube and all the platforms that now broadcast volleyball. But unfortunately, it wasn't as big back then, and as accessible as it is nowadays.
Actually, how is the system? Because before college, I mean, before the university, because how it's organized in terms of high school volleyball, or because we all know that the typical American sports, especially basketball, are very well organized and very popular when it comes to high school. Of course, also in the college. But how is it in high school?
Yeah, so it's definitely organized differently than anywhere else in the world, because you have your high school, you have your school teams, but the school teams have no association to your club in any sense, really, because the clubs are operated outside of schools completely. And typically, with your school, you have a season either in the fall or the spring, and that's the only time you play with your school. So those 3-4 months. Typically, too, I don't want to speak poorly, but the school teams in generally it's not as competitive as the club, because all of the top players usually go play on clubs, and the top players in the area will play on the club teams in that area. So that's really competitive. And then the club teams compete regionally. So within like your usually state or area of the state. California has 2 regions because it's so big. We were in Northern California. And then you usually qualify to bigger tournaments that are like nationally. And then there's a national championships every year in the end of June, beginning of July, that all of the best teams in the country usually go to and play for the championship of the U.S. And so the club's season usually runs all months outside of the high school year. So if you play high school in the spring, so like January through May, then the club season is, August till December, pauses, and then you get going again for June and July again. So that's typically how it's ran. And all the kids that you see play in the universities, they get recruited normally through club volleyball. So these club volleyball tournaments, you'll have like hundreds and thousands of teams. The university coaches will go to those events and recruit. So they'll be walking around. You have like hundreds of courts in these facilities. It's just like volleyball, every age group, every sometimes both genders, and a bunch of different levels as well.
Yeah, and in this regard, how did how are you recruited actually in Hawaii? I mean,
in Hawaii, yeah. So we we were always fortunate, really fortunate with having our team was always one of the top teams in the U.S. We had, still to this day, there's still a good amount of players who played for our club team that are playing professionally, which is not you don't see that happen too often in the U.S. where guys are playing professionally for a long time, especially from one juniors club team. And so a lot of times we had a lot of college coaches like come to our practices. They would fly into into San Francisco Bay Area and come watch our practices, because they were recruiting a few guys from our team. Also, at the main tournaments, a lot of the college coaches were always there talking to our club coach, who's our father, talking to a lot of people who are involved in the team. And we had always had a connection to Hawaii. Our dad used to coach there when we were young and coached with the current head coach, who is our head coach at Hawaii. And we just always had a connection there. So they offered both of us when the time, when it became time in our junior, senior, I forgot what the timing is nowadays of when they could do that, but they offered when they could. And then from there we took visits and ended up going to Hawaii.
Yeah, and I'm very interested probably to carry on with Gage, but Hawaii is the last pronounced state of the U.S. So of course it's very far away from from the main part of the country. And how is the different? Because we know it's a different culture, but let's give me some details that probably I don't know about Hawaii as a culture, as a different place for living and studying and playing volleyball.
Yeah, I mean, in relation to, I'll start with this. The most important thing is you have to know that there's no professional team of any sport in the state of Hawaii. So the university is the only. Imagine like you have a country here in Europe where they don't have anything but one team, and so of course the entire country will cheer on this team. It's the same thing in Hawaii. Like there's nothing else, so the entire state cheers on this team. You're in Hawaii, you're on television every across the entire state, every single match. Like all the ads, media, TV, everything is always, marketing is always used. They use the University of Hawaii for this. So for us, we really, you have to understand that you are the face in a way of the state of Hawaii from going there. So from the, there's good and bad parts of that. One, the funding is really good for men's volleyball. Like the budget and stuff like this is really high level. They take really good care of you. There's a lot of pressure, obviously, to win there nowadays, which is good. I love that. But the people of Hawaii are just very, very welcoming. Like you see it and they talk about it, but it truly, like you truly feel the aloha spirit is what they call when you go to school there, because everybody there really cares about you, like both as players and just as people, like off the court. They take incredible care of you. They really want you to do well, both on the court and off the court. And they take care of you like their family. So this is something that's very special. And I think everybody who goes there recognizes this pretty quickly.
And is Hawaii actually strong in any other sport? Because we know that Hawaii is very strong in volleyball, a lot of titles. But is the University of Hawaii strong in any other sports, especially from the most popular sports, of course?
Water polo.
Yeah, women's water
and
polo,
men's
they have a
volleyball.
lot of internationals too. They always have like half their team is European players coming over. Depends on the year. The thing is, when you have to kind of get an understanding of how college university athletics works in the US, where I don't want to go into it gets really confusing, but you have what it's called is the Power Four. And basically the schools that have the best American football teams, those schools typically have the most amount of money to fund their teams because how the market works in the US. So typically it's really University of Hawaii is not in the Power Four, but for volley, it's just it's a really unique situation because Hawaii is one of the biggest volleyball is one of the biggest sports in the state, which is not common in the US. So it's difficult to explain like you have to understand how like the funding and the NCAA and the laws all work, but you have to understand like Hawaii is a very unique situation because volleyball is like almost the biggest sport on campus, which you don't find anywhere else in the US. And so all the money goes there, but it's not a Power Four is what they call it in the US, where that's typically where the most amount of money is across the entire athletic department.
What is the Power Four in terms of volleyball? Hawaii, Long Beach, UCLA, probably.
Yeah, top four for sure. On the men's side, yeah, I think you hit it right on the point. UCLA, Long Beach, Hawaii, and then the fourth one can float every year. Those three have been consistently up there. Some years it's Irvine. Who else can you throw in there?
Last year was GCU.
Yeah, GCU can be in there
Irvine.
some years.
Ohio State's up and down.
Yeah, it's difficult. The top is really a top three, and then the other
top three,
below that kind of like changes every year depending.
Taking into account also the coaches. Honestly, I'm not sure who is the coach of Hawaii now, but when you have John Sparrow in UCLA and I just remember the name now.
Al Knipe.
Alan Knipe, of course, in Long Beach, which is a shame because there are 4 Bulgarians in Long Beach. As a transition now, let's talk about the Bulgarians in Hawaii because Rado Parapunov was the reason for me to watch you together, Joe, in Hawaii. How was that? Was 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years, 4 years.
Almost, what is that, like 6?
Almost 6 now. Yeah, I'm in my 6th year in Europe, so almost 6 years here. I graduated in 19, so like spring of beginning of 19.
So it's 18, 19.
It was 4
years for me, 6
years for Joe.
How many years did you play together with Rado? 1, 2?
I played 3 seasons.
4.
Yeah.
So so we are together. Yeah. What? There is a Bulgarian now too, Christian Titriski, also an opposite. So Bulgarian opposites go to Hawaii. But what was your first impression from Rado? And you named it. I mean, like you, I heard it. I saw it in U.S. media. Parapunov.
Yeah. In Hawaii they come up with good nicknames too. I'm trying to think of some other ones. The thing about when Europeans come over to the US, one, the schooling is different. So usually the Europeans are 1 year older than a normal first year American would be. So the first year Americans like 17, 18, usually Europeans are 19. So they're a little bit older. Definitely a lot more experienced at a high level. And so that's one thing you recognize. Like they understand how to play volleyball at a higher level. There's a lot of, I would say, like for Americans, there's definitely a couple like learning curves that they have to get through, to kind of take that next step usually. But the Europeans come over, pretty refined. They understand. They've watched high-level volleyball their whole life. A lot of times they've played and practiced with professional teams, some of the top players in the world on a consistent basis. So with all those things, that's one thing you notice with Rado when he came. He's physical, good, big, powerful lefty. For in the U.S., that was something at the time. I don't think there was a ton of really, really super high-level opposites in the U.S., so that was something that always stood out to a lot of coaches across the U.S. is just his presence definitely made a difference when you compare our team to a lot of other teams throughout the country. And he's a hard worker. That was the one thing that you never know when you're bringing in somebody who's that talented, whether they're U.S. or European, is are they going to come in and be, not work very hard and just kind of get by with their talent? But he came in, worked really hard in the weight room, worked really hard in the gym, and was a really good teammate. He's extremely one of my favorite teammates I've ever played with still to this day. And everybody loved him. So that all that combined made for, made for his career, made for a really good career at Hawaii.
Do you have any impressions from the new Bulgarian there, or because of the fact that they the championship didn't start it yet, so hasn't started yet? So, do you have any idea of Christian? No.
I have yet to see anything.
Yeah, that's normal. Just to mention, because he was playing also last year also in Levski when Levski became champion. For the very first time for some years, together with the opposite now, Vinslav.
I watched when they played. I watched a little bit. I haven't watched enough to watch, but I watched a little bit when they played European Championships against Hainaut, this past summer when they played against the French in the final.
Oh yeah, in the final,
of Europeans this past summer. But no, I haven't. I'll tell you maybe in a month here if I get a chance to watch it.
Yeah, and okay, let's talk about the transition to European volleyball, because I could assume that it's very specific. NCAA volleyball is one thing, European volleyball is different thing. Acclimatizing to Europe in terms of professionals with college graduates is different, but how is the transition to European volleyball in this regard? Firstly, Gage played in DEA in Bulgaria. We'll talk about this a little bit later. And then in Luneburg. And Joe played in Friedrichshafen, right? In Luneburg, and now in Chaumont. Right.
Yeah.
How tough is the transition?
Yeah. So for me, I know how I got there. It was. I think the Bratoyev brothers were watching Rado and NCAAs, and they needed a libero, and they had all Bulgarian guys for the most part. There were a few foreigners. We had a Russian guy, a Croatian guy, so we were allowed one more foreigner on the court. And so they liked me, and then I guess they reached out to Rado, and then at the end of the year, and then I don't know. I guess I liked what I heard, and then I came over. The first year for me was the hardest year, I would say. And because it was just a huge cultural difference that I wasn't used to in Bulgaria, and that was on and off the court. So for me on the court, I was used to a very intense form of volleyball and teammates, but obviously the Balkan and the American way of communication is very, very different, and especially my first year, it was really tough. Because I was also just trying to figure things out, and then also I was trying to not mess up and not get yelled at. But I will say I think that year it was equal to 2 years overseas because I learned twice as fast. Because they wanted the best for me. They wanted what was best for me. Now I still have friends from there. Actually, when I came back to Levski, I saw a couple friends, and I was really happy to see them. But like I said, I learned twice as fast because it's like, as you know, they're not going to put up, with stupid like university mistakes that you make, because there was still so much I didn't know about the game and how it's played and like what can happen and what cannot. And I learned very, 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 very quickly what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And yeah, so then that I learned a bunch, and there was tough times. There were fun times as well. But like I said, it was probably my most influential year I've had in my life, if I'm being honest with you, on and off the volleyball court. So yeah, I learned twice as quick, and I'm very, very grateful for the experience. And I can thank the Bratayev brothers and Rado for getting me there. But that was my experience.
Yeah, I just have two specific questions in terms of the culture differences. First of all,
Yeah.
can you give me two examples? Uh, Culture shock or differences in terms of persons, just some
Yeah.
stories or something that happened. And
Hmm.
I'm also interested in cultural differences. Okay, they are not cultural differences in terms of facilities, because we know that volleyball is played in the NCAA, big halls with a lot of people in it,
Yeah.
especially in Hawaii. And here in Bulgaria, the let's say it a little bit diplomatically, but most of the halls are not in the very best
Right.
condition.
Right. For
How,
sure.
how, do, you, how do you perceive it from that point of view?
Yeah, I want to say, oh yeah, so when you're usually in the States, you don't have that good of an idea what overseas life is like. It's not like, you don't really know that many professional volleyball players. So it's hard to get an idea of what it's like. So I remember a cultural shock was when I went over there, and I remember one of my friends, Bobby, he was our backup setter. He was
Yeah,
playing really well.
Bobby.
It was a preseason game, I think, and I was like, and so we put our second string in, our second players in, and I was on the bench and I was cheering for Bobby, and Jore came running over to me and he's yelling at me. He's like, "Do not cheer for him." I said, "Why shouldn't I cheer for him? He's doing well." He's like, "Because if you cheer for him, he feels good. And then if he feels good about himself, he will get lazy. And if he gets lazy, then he won't develop." So I wasn't, and I was just shocked. I was like, "Oh, okay." And that was a big thing is because we had so many old guys and then a couple young guys that it was so many at times it was crazy. I remember like in morning practices, like it'd be like, okay, all the old guys, you don't have to come to practice, and then the young guys, you guys can come. And then I remember some old guys would come sometimes, and it would be so chaotic, and it would be like, so four of us young guys, and it would end up they'd have our backup setter or someone else crying in the corner. Then you have other guys getting like kicking balls to the ceiling because it was so crazy. Guys would be ripping their shirts off at 9 o'clock in the morning, and coach would be like, because I played for Vinci, who was an unbelievable player, and he was like I said, I learned a lot from him. It was he obviously played in Italy for a long time, so he had such a high bar, and I just wasn't there yet. And he'd be like, "Why can't you do this? Why can't you?" And like I said, this is not to put him in a bad light, but he would get angry at me sometimes. Um, and then he'd just do it and be like, "Why, Gage? Why are you not doing this?" And then so I had to learn quicker. So I had to learn. I'm like, "All right, well, I'm gonna get, you know, ripped apart if I don't do this." So morning practices, not cheering for the youngsters. I remember my first game was in Dobrich, and I remember that we went into their hall is not. It's a great.
It's
As
a
I'm sure
tiny one.
yeah, it's a historical hall, but they put us in this locker room, probably as big as my closet, I would say. And I was like, "How are we supposed to fit in here?" And they said, "Okay, if you want." And in the middle of this like closet, there was this old. I would give it 40-year-old, if not older, 50-year-old, what's it called? Training bed. Someone, and it
Yeah.
had like 7 layers of just like ripped apart molding foam. And so guys would get on that and, get treatment or whatever. And then we'd get out there, and this is the first experience because in Dea we have a really good, I love the hall there. But then we go out there, and I remember there was like heating lamps, like just straight heating lamps that were not too far above, like the like very close to us, and had like no protector over it. So I'm like, that thing could blow up at any second. It was like an old hall. But but it was an unreal experience, and I still go watch the film sometimes for fun to see how far I've come or some good memories. But like I said, my goal is not to paint Bulgaria in a bad picture in any way, but there were some things where I had to get used to that I'm so grateful for, and I learned a lot from. And that was kind of my few early on experiences with the Bulgarian culture. And but like I said, there were it was a hard time, but there were good memories as well. So yeah.
Joe, I'm sure that the culture shock in Germany is not that big, but probably there are some differences. Yeah, to be mentioned.
Yeah, it probably was more so with teammates, just interactions that you have with teammates that are different. Like the first day I showed up in Germany, I was like early in preseason, my first year in Friedrichshafen, and we showed up, and I think like the next day we played like a second league team for a test match, and the second league team like showed up with like 3 boxes of beer. This is a very like German thing, but after the game, I'd never seen this before. In the U.S., this is not heard of ever. Like you'll never see this happen. And yeah, play the game, and then after they bring out the 3 boxes of beer. But yeah, it's like small stuff like that. Nothing to compare with Gage's stories from his pretty often. But just
Yeah.
teammates that I've had, just really funny situations throughout my time. But it was way easier to acclimate. Friedrichshafen's really professional, great club. I got to give a shout out to Rado. He's the scout there, assistant coach, leader of Friedrichshafen. He kind of runs everything down there, but he's always been awesome. Been there since I was there. And all the older guys are really great there. So yeah, for me, the transition's been a lot easier. Come over to France, I really enjoy it over here. I'm in my second year now in Chaumont. Man, just different. Last year we had like a really experienced team. This year, a much younger team. And so just, I would say like those experiences probably present the most amount of change, I would say, of anything.
Okay, I'm always asking this question because I'm very interested in how do you compare the different championships. Rado Parapunov was, I guess, very long time ago, probably 2 years and something. And I asked him about NCAA comparing to Bulgaria, and you can also add Germany and France. How do you compare the level of the championship? Because most of the time I'm receiving different answers in this regard.
I can start with.
Okay, of course. Yeah, probably one thing is gauge impressions from 2 years ago, and of course now the level of Levski. Okay, the best Bulgarian team, but you can add something also in this. In this field.
So for me, and my brother had talked about this before I went overseas. It's just a lot of the small stuff. Like US, the physicality is like at university, there's some good physicality, some good physical people can jump pretty high, can swing pretty hard. But you get and you see it now, and I was also guilty of it back then. It's just there's a bunch of small ball control things that I don't think are also taught in the American system early on. So stuff like recycling, stuff like everybody can set, handling easy balls perfectly, which is you'd think is like a no-brainer, and it was back then. But it's crazy how much I didn't take care of it as much as I do now, or I know I need to now, or players also that are in the NCAA. Stuff like that for sure is way more often. Obviously, more errors. We're younger, so I mean, in the NCAA, so a lot more errors happen. But it's mainly just the small ball control things and small stuff that needs to happen that doesn't happen continuously at that level. and that was in even Bulgaria, and then also in Germany. There was still a big level of handling those type of situations. Joey.
Yeah, I can just speak about the level of Germany, my impression, and France. Yeah, I mean, the U.S., legitimately, you'll probably have 5 to 8 really intense matches on the season, like that are actually high level, 2 teams that are evenly matched. To be honest, Germany now is getting to a point now. Like when I was there, it was a little bit more spread out, but I think you're seeing it even in Germany now. It's starting to become like 1 tier and 2 tiers pretty clearly. And then the French league is like you'll lose to the last place team, the first place team every year. Like it already happened. The last place team beat the first place team, stuff like that. It's just so even across the board. And there's a lot of like really young talent in the league here. But you also see like in the French league, you look at like who goes to the Plusliga, who goes to who goes to Italy, who goes to like the top clubs, and a lot of times they'll pull from the French league, all the top players in the French league. So they wanted like the French leagues are really I always tell a lot of Americans like it's great for setters to come to the French league, like outsides, these types of players where they need to get a little bit more like all around, maybe improve their reception, their defense. This is a great league to come to because you really get challenged every single match to be at a high level there. And so that's one thing I love about playing here in France is just every match it's difficult. You have to be ready to perform, and you could lose to literally any team, and any team could beat any team too. So that's what I like most about France. But yeah, I would say U.S. and Germany is getting more similar, where it's like only a handful of really intense matches, and I think it's hard. It might make it even more difficult because the level of focus can drop off pretty easily at times, and so the top teams really have to create that environment in their practices and their trainings, because it's difficult to stay focused when you're playing teams that are, significantly less talented than you are.
Would it be right to summarize that in Germany there are 3 teams, let's say 3 teams, Berlin, Luneburg, Friedrichshafen, that in general are better than French teams, but the level of the French clubs is more even, and that makes the championship, the league, more competitive?
Yeah, we're talking about this. I would say, yeah, the top German teams are like pretty much same level as French teams. Yeah, it's different. The thing about like comparing, I would say Germany and France is difficult because like in Germany, teams only have to play, like I said, 6 to 8 really high level matches, where I think it makes it difficult to compare, because it's like, okay, how would this team do if they have to play every single match, at a high level, and they get challenged every match, versus they only have to play 6 to 8 good matches. Versus like also French teams, I think, if I'm being honest, French teams wouldn't do so well maybe in the German league, because I think there's personality of teams in France where if they are allowed to slip off, they would slip off, like mentally with practices and stuff. The one thing I noticed about like French volleyball culture is when they have to like get up for a match, there's the French guys can literally go through sometimes a whole week of practice looking like you wondering how they're professional volleyball players, and then they'll show up and play amazing on the weekend. And like that is difficult to play in a league like Germany when you're like that, because it's really easy to slack off, like in their heads. Like I think it's easy for them to kind of fall off, but in France, they know they have to show up on the matches every single week. So mentally they are prepared for that. And so it's just difficult it's different situations. Like you see a lot of players come from Germany, not do well in France, and then players from France not do well in Germany. And I think it's for those reasons specifically. I think the the French league is a big challenge, and that's why a lot of the top leagues take from the French league, because they want to see how they do playing every single week at a high level.
And if I can do it a little bit more specific, when if you take the best NCAA teams like Hawaii, UCLA, and Long Beach, where do you put them in terms of level in the French league and in the German league? Of course, I know this is very subjective, it's very relative, but in general.
It's just consistency, Joe. I think it's just they were just
I think they would struggle a lot in the
Yeah.
French league, and I think they wouldn't compete with the top German teams very well. I think it would
top 8. I would give them top 8, possibly top 7
in Germany.
Yeah,
I'd give them top 6. I'd give the top teams in the top 6. They're better than anyone in the bottom half. But in France, something about the bottom team, they would in France they'd be fighting for relegation, I think. I don't know. It's tough though, because it's just like a whole. You're talking about like grown adults. This is a conversation they have all the time in the U.S. with like American basketball. Talking about grown adults who are like lifting, and you're talking about men versus like almost like boys. So it's just a different, the speed of the game. I'll give you this framework too. In the U.S., generally the top teams are making between 8 and like 11 unforced errors a match. If you do that professionally, you're losing the set per set. If you're doing that professionally, you're losing the set. And at the highest level here, you're talking about top teams are between 4 and 7, maybe in general. If you're like high level sets and high level matches between 4 and 7, obviously there's outliers, but if you're averaging 8 to 11 errors a set, you're gonna lose just that alone. Not including like how many points they're actually scoring on their own. So when you just look at like statistics and stuff, like the room for error is significantly lower at the professional level. And that's the biggest jump that you see with like young Americans. They come and they make a ton of mistakes usually. And that's the biggest jump that they have to make from going to the next level.
Okay, let's talk about the Champions League, because you played 3 or 4 matches against Levski, so 1 more for Joe. 2 wins for Luneburg of Gage, and 1 loss in Sofia of Chaumont. How was the experience to play in Bulgaria? And Gage also can make a comparison with what was 2 years ago also.
I can. Well, I remember that game, and when I played, and coach came up to me. He's like, "Today, you will show why you are." I don't know. I forget what he said. He said something along the lines of, why you are thought to be so good or something." Because he's like, and he put his hand on my shoulders, like, "Today, you will show it." I ended up getting pulled in the second set. I was terrible. That game. We lose 3-0. That was the game we would have gotten 3rd place for sure, and a medal in the Bulgarian championships. But since we lost that match, we ended up, I think we tied for 3rd. But yeah, I remember it was terrible. It was a great gym though. It's a lot of the same players that I played against. And then, to go in there and then win, the crowd is always, I know the Bulgarian crowd very well. I know, they'll let you hear it when they think a call is wrong, or, if you're winning, if you're the opposing team, they're going to go at you. So I love that. And, it was good to go in there, and, good to be back in Bulgaria. It was a full circle moment for me. I very grateful that I got back, and it's a really nice gym, an easy gym to play in. It's great for volleyball, so I had no complaints whatsoever, and luckily it ended in our favor.
Yeah, I mean, like, just being honest, like were complete on the contrary. It was awesome playing. They had a great crowd and everything. Champions League has been a nightmare kind of for us. Like, just being honest with Chaumont, we've been 2 matches up 2-0 in like complete control of both matches. And, you know, like Luneburg, we're up 7-1 in the third set. And we lose the set. We end up, you know, obviously losing in tiebreak. Same thing, you know, we go Bulgaria, win 2 sets clearly. And then just, we've had that, to be honest, we almost did it again last night. It's just, we're a really young team. And you can see that shown at certain points of our season. And then even in Jastrzębski, before Christmas break, we're up 22-18 to go to tie break with them in Poland. And then we, you know, just stuff happens. So it's like, it's just been difficult for us. The match in Sofia was no different. And yeah, it was an awesome environment and everything, but just in terms of like play and everything, it's been frustrating. Obviously the French league's been going a lot better for us, but yeah, it's just been whatever the case has been, it's just not been good for us in Champions League. Yeah, that's just kind of where we're at with that.
And what is the feeling to play one against each other? Because you played, you mentioned the match, and you play again in how many? In 2 weeks? 2 weeks time?
2 weeks we play. Yeah, we play. Yeah, in France. No, for us, we don't play against each other too often. We play on the same team for like 12 years. But it's, you know, the one thing is, it's not like we're like directly against each other. Like, we're not like hitting, like, it's not like Gage is hitting against me or anything like that. So it's not like a matchup where you feel like that direct competition, because it's like libero versus setter. It's like almost 2 positions.
Probably the least impacted positions. Yeah. You couldn't choose 2. I mean, I guess you could choose libero and libero, but there's no
like direct competition there between like a setter and a libero in any way. So besides that fact, you know, it obviously it's a different feeling for the match, but yeah, I mean, we played against each other our whole lives, like in more of like a recreational setting, but not in any competitive setting like this, or like official setting, I should say. So it's cool. No, yeah, and we'll get to play again. Our parents will be there for the next match in 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. Yeah, obviously we're both like rooting for each other, which means we're actively rooting against our own team. But so it's interesting for sure.
Let's talk about Out of System, because you have also a YouTube channel. It's called Out of System. Probably Joe can a little bit move to to see it.
Yeah.
How did you start this project, and who was the idea, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that can go into about Out of System, and like can talk for a while about it. We're in our 4th year. I always forget what year. It's been 4 years since we started it. It really started off as a podcast during COVID, kind of like a volleyball show. We just like got on like all like the biggest volleyball players and people that we knew, because everyone was just sitting at home. And Gage and I would shoot a show. This is still actually some of the best content. Like, anybody who's been there since the beginning, if you go watch like original Out of System volleyball show videos, you should see some of the segments we were doing. Like, we were dressing up in costumes and doing funny stuff. So at that point, there was not much thought to like what Out of System would be. It was just like, let's just go have fun and shoot videos. We were bored during COVID. We were doing stuff where we were like shooting podcasts, sitting in a bathtub and stuff like that. Like, just weird stuff. And, you know, within like a year, some people started asking us to go and like record videos at volleyball events. And we had different ideas about how to like do social media around events that we go to. and slowly, like we kind of within like a 2-year span, we brought on some other members and we said like, let's go on a summer tour where we go in a minivan for like 6 weeks and we just go host a bunch of volleyball camps and go play in a bunch of volleyball tournaments. And we we found this little kid who was in a university. He's like 18 years old at the time. He never used a camera ever in his life. And we're like, you're going to video everything for us. He never did that before in his life. And he did a great
We also had
job.
sponsors. We had sponsors that
Yeah.
we had to like,
We
had to shoot for. So like, it's not like just for us. We had to shoot professional videos for sponsors, and we're trusting this 18-year-old kid with something
and
he's never used.
he did a great job.
He was great.
And from there, like people start obviously just from like our connections to like the volleyball community and people just seeing us and traveling, things have grown a lot. And, you know, we're at a point now where last summer we did summer tour. We had like 36 events. You know, we're working with a couple thousand kids at summer. We're working with like all the biggest brands in the volleyball space in the US. And yeah, like the USA Volleyball Federation now brings us in to come do a lot of their content for certain events. And yeah, we've built a lot of relationships, but there's still like a lot more things that we want to do and will do and continue to build without a system. But overall, we're just the all things volleyball brand. I've kind of been telling people like we're just everything volleyball. Anything you can imagine volleyball, we have our foot in it in some way. And yeah, another aspect is just the social media with all my brother's butt digs and like all his like funny videos is what kind of keeps us relevant and people see. I'm sure everybody who's watching this has seen at least one of his videos because it's, you know, I think this year alone, he had a couple go for like over 30 million views. And you're talking about like 1 million, 2 million likes on different like Instagram reels and TikToks. And yeah, it's cool to see that. Like, and a lot of people like will imitate my brother in the US and tag us. So that's always funny. Some people don't even realize that my brother was the one who started those trends. Like, I'm like, do you know who started this trend? I'm like, it's my brother. And they don't even know that. They just like, oh, I saw this from a lot of people.
You're welcome, world.
Yeah.
Coaches probably hate me.
There's a lot of things that funny. People
One
love
of your latest guests was yeah, go on.
No, I was just gonna say Gage is by far the most popular. Like I hosted a camp in the US last week, and all of them were just like, "Where's Gage? Where's Gage?" Like everybody just always wants Gage for everything. So it's funny to see, but yeah, like I said, everything.
You're the CEO.
Yeah, I'm behind. I like to stay behind the scenes a lot of the time, and let Gage kind of do all the content and stuff like that. He's much better at it too.
I watched the podcast with Simeon Nikolov. Why do you think there is a lot of hype for him now in the US?
Well, sorry. I mean these blueberries for practice. I apologize.
Yeah.
Also, side note, the Bulgarian blueberries, unbelievable. That they get, I think, from the mountains or something that they put in the cheesecake. Those small blueberries, unbelievable. Sorry, besides the point. Simeon Nikolov, well, first of all, it was probably his brother who started the hype. You know, his brother was first time ever NCAA player of the year as a freshman. Unheard of. There's guys who have been close, like TJ DeFalco, you know. Nick Sturgeon won his sophomore year, but no one's ever done what he did. He came in. I mean, Hawaii had to get in his way of a national championship, but he came in and led him to a national championship game. Again, Big West conference win or conference title. But then he comes in. He already went viral from that Poland bounce where he went on 2. So he goes on this. You see him in all social media as 16 and 17 as a 16, 17-year-old starting as the Bulgarian national team setter. And that goes all over media. And one thing about the US has the most media by far, hands down. Especially when it comes to volleyball. Them in Japan, I would say. But in terms of like who's like editing, like who's making the edits, who's filming every game, putting the most volleyball media out, it's by far the US. So you take someone who is who was deemed the next one up, and who was volleyball pop culture lore of the best 17-year-old in the world, and you put him in one of the best programs that has one of the best media outlets in volleyball in the world, and with Long Beach, that and that's gonna do it. And like in where there's so much media in the U.S., that's just gonna do it itself. I mean, it's just it. I guess the videos speak for themselves, I guess, and his play speaks for itself, and it's just a winning. It's a winning equation, I would say.
If you look at U.S. sports in general, like look at every major league, they create like superstars, and they really like market the heck out of certain people. And so it's the same thing in volleyball. Like if you look at kids, just go look at the comment sections of all these videos. Like they just create like this like godly like things about like certain people, and they just this is U.S. culture. They overhype everything.
Yeah.
They market the crap, and this is just if you just go read the comment sections, you'll just laugh because you're like, that's just of every sport. They do the same thing with all like junior athletes that like are big coming up. And all these kids are like, oh my gosh, like, you know, it's just like, it's hard to explain.
Cracked. He's OP. He's overpowered.
His aura.
So much aura.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
The culture. Yeah.
Those are words. Those are the slang words they use. But yeah.
Probably is linked also to the fact that that his brother was there. So they have some kind of impression from him. But the hype overall is even bigger, and in my from what I see is even bigger. Yeah, because probably they were not that aware of Alex, and now they see. I think Simeon debut for Levski was he wasn't 15, I think, and he was serving very well. Yeah.
Versus me, I remember playing him. He was like 15. Yeah, I think it was my first.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was. Yeah. He's now 18, but he was born in 2006, so he's now 18. But yeah, he's now 2 years in the national team, in the men's national team. Alex's debut was also very very early. So, okay, guys. As a tradition, I am ending the podcast lately in the very same way always, and this is with a recommendation from your part on a next guest. There are two conditions. First condition for the podcast to be held in English or in Bulgarian, but probably in English in your case, and secondly, that you will be able to assist for the contact with this person.
That's tough. I was gonna say Fornal, but I have no contact whatsoever to Fornal. Joe, do you know anyone?
Does it make sense to do somebody like a college player, like a Keone?
Ooh, yes.
If you believe that it could be an interesting guest, yeah, why not?
For sure, Keone.
Probably like the biggest like social media. Would you say?
Keone him. He's up next.
Yeah, Keone Tim. He's like social media, the biggest social media presence I would say in volleyball, in college volleyball in the U.S. Yeah. And he's close with us. He's really great conversation too. And I think he would be really interesting it would connect really well with American audience too.
Yeah.
That is very suitable probably when the NCAA championship starts, or at least when probably a little bit later when we see how Ice is doing with Christian, how Long Beach is doing with 4 Bulgarians there. Lazar Buchkov, we mentioned, we haven't mentioned Lazar. He's a middle blocker playing for Long Beach for second year. Do you have any impressions from him?
I played him. And I remember he came in.
Yeah, in Bulgaria, right? Yeah.
But other than that, I've just seen clips of him, and I asked my teammate here, he was just on Long Beach. And he says he's really good, really fast, really agile. So, and he played with Simeon, so I imagine they're gonna be very good.
Yeah. Okay, guys, thank you very much. I would like to wish you a lot of success for 2025 starting, except for the match of Joe against Levski, the second match, of course. But away from that, a lot of success from any point, professional, personal, whatever you want, of course, to happen. And yeah, thank you very much again, and it was a pleasure.
Thanks for having us,
very
man.
much.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
having us.
Thank you. I hope that for all the listeners, for the spectators, that was very useful, interesting, curious content. I was very interested in what Gage say about the cultural shock in Bulgaria, because that's always a topic of interest. So thank you again for watching, listening, whatever, and see you the next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.